Hello, welcome to the Lately in JavaScript podcast Hangout. This is episode number 58, and as always, I have here with me with the probably already colder Latvia. Hello, Arthur. How are you doing?
Yeah, hello, and yeah, it's getting pretty much colder than you have. And today we have another guest. It's actually my colleague working. We are working together on the country, and it's Artem from even colder Moscow, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
hello.
oh, no. Moscow is nice in the pictures.
Oh,
Maybe in the summer.
no, it's always nice.
Yeah. Okay. Well, today we have very nice, interesting topics, and we are going to actually start with a topic suggested by Arthur because he has been struggling with front-end testing, right?
Yeah. So I can take over and share my screen probably.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Okay. So recently I needed to make a release of a SDK we are using for the web development for web analytics, and I needed to create some tests so that we could use a regression test and stuff like that. So I started to search for things about front-end testing, and this article by Krasimir Tsonev, A Journey Through Client-Side Testing with JavaScript, was kind of awesome and helped me a lot. It talked a lot about the terming used in the front-end testing and how they work, how to run them, and suggested different libraries to try out with examples. And I kind of went through with it, trying them out, and I found the problem that most of them are meant for UI testing. And in my case, I didn't want to test UI. I want to test a specific library that makes a HTTP request to the server, and it was kind of very specific needs. So while trying all the frameworks suggested here, like Mocha, Karma, and even let me find it, and even Dalek.js, which was a very interesting solution. They didn't quite suit me because as I said they were meant mostly for UI testing, and I had the choice to make how to test my web SDK properly, and so I started with basics, trying out simply Phantom.js and trying to see what I can do with it. I could intercept AJAX requests to the server, so I could see if they constructed correctly. So I thought any of the frameworks that would use Phantom.js for testing purposes would also provide that functionality, and unfortunately none of them did. You could not intercept any AJAX requests from any of the testing frameworks that I've tried out. And I even was at the point where I thought I could write them myself, writing like something in the assertion library and then test executions. But well, it would be a lot of work, and trying to find something that fits Phantom.js was also hard. So I was looking for something more, and that's when I stumbled on interesting framework called Casper.js. That's basically a testing utility based on the same Phantom.js, but providing lots of additional wrappers and higher level functions and
Can you
stuff that
zoom the
even more.
screen?
Yeah. Okay. So providing lots of interesting functionality, even taking screenshots and stuff, and it seemed all great. But again, there was a problem with how to really test if the requests are constructed correctly, and again, no way to intercept AJAX request in Casper.js. But what I could do is to capture console log output from it, what my library outputted, and that is what I used to like see if requests are constructed correctly and made and finished in the process by server. So I ended up using it and it suited me great. But if you are interested in more, then there is another article, functional testing with Casper.js, that goes through unit test making in Casper.js and even provides a code and examples on how you could test. I think it tests Reddit now here for checking for articles and specific div elements. Basically, it's a good UI testing, and I actually start to think that now I need to try it somewhere on in our product again, because it was much easier than I thought it would be to test UI. That was an interesting moment for me.
Yeah,
So
well,
you guys did
that's
any UI testings?
well, testing user interfaces is always hard, and personally I find it boring because precisely of the challenges that you mentioned. But what about those solutions? You said you didn't want to test the actual user interfaces. It was just the requests that are going back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically,
So
the library I developed, it doesn't have any UI. It's usable by other web code, and that's why I didn't need that part.
So what stopped you from testing it on the server side when you get the requests?
Yeah, that everywhere where I looked, they suggested me to make a server-side testing, but it is a separate component that I wanted to test, and of course I could create an emulation of server-side in the testing workflow. But I did a really simple setup. I hooked it up to Travis continuous integration, so it runs tests on every commit, and I wanted to make it small and simple enough to junk up my GitHub repo with server-side code and stuff like that. So when user wants to download it, he doesn't understand why there is parts of Node.js, why there are parts of something else. So I wanted to keep it really small, and Casper.js really helped me to do it.
Yeah, I see. So you want to test it from outside your server environment. I mean.
Yeah, it's a separate component.
Yeah. Well, I think that makes sense for your specific case because you are providing an API and you are not giving away the actual API code on the server side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. And now moving on to another topic. Suggested. Well, actually, Arthur suggested to talk about it, but I think it's Artem that is the expert on the topic. In the case, it's Mithril, which, from what I understood, it's an MVC framework that allows you to build web applications without having to mess up with HTML. Is this accurate or not?
Well, pretty much yes, but the goodest parts of it really is not about that. It's not about HTML at all.
Yeah.
So let me clear the screen then. So Mithril is a reactive virtual DOM framework. It's pretty much on par functionally with React, made by Facebook. But the best part of it is that it's ridiculously small. It's only 12 kilobytes zipped. Of course, it has no dependencies, so it's really tiny vanilla JavaScript framework with virtual DOM inside. This is the best part, probably. It's really simple. It has MVC part and some other additions like router and API request maker. setup for cross-browser support. What I like most about it is that it's really, really vanilla JavaScript. It doesn't want me to put some jQuery inside, some Angular, or whatever, those huge frameworks. It's really tiny, small, and, well, it does a job.
The part that scares me most, that by design you are not like allowed or meant to use HTML in your web application at all. So that was the first that blew my mind, and I'm still kind of afraid of trying something in production with it, because what if there would be a need for something to do in HTML, and I could not do it here with it.
There are some hooks, actually. You can get actual DOM elements and, you know, move them, do whatever you want with them.
You could hook up jQuery to it too.
Yeah, no, I didn't, but probably you will do that. So, let me just explain another best part of what I like most. It is actually that code, when using Mithril, is really, really well structured, because you don't need to subscribe to events, like when you usually do some jQuery element find, then you write something on click and function handler. You don't do that. And in that handler, you usually modify some DOM and then hook up to DOM events again. In Mithril, you have everything in single place. Like, you return virtual DOM with event handlers, with content, and with with HTML elements, and so on. So the code is always in a single place. This is really, really big advantage over jQuery backbone and even Angular in some sort.
Yeah, so basically you don't have to use a template and then manipulate a template from the JavaScript. You do it all in the JavaScript, right? That's basically what you meant.
Yeah, of course.
And I opened here an example, which again I was at first afraid of, because if you're gonna structure HTML document like that, you would end up with a white big callback hell. Well, at least it would look like callback hell. But as I understood, main position of Mithril.js was to create as small as possible reusable widget that can be inserted again somewhere in the DOM, and thus the single view would not be so big of elements and stuff.
Yeah, it seems that it's HTML with a different syntax.
You could say that.
It's not actually. It's absolutely not. I mean, this view function, it actually returns a JavaScript object, right? It doesn't return really built DOM elements or whatever. And then this virtual DOM object returned by a view function, it is used later on when you modify DOM with some element, with some, for example, when you click on a checkbox, right, it's become selected. What happens next is this view function is called again. And depending on what it returned, for example, you could return different TD element for a checkbox. For example, task description could be different, right? In this case, you return a different virtual DOM JavaScript object from this function. And Mithril does diffing, the process of comparing previous virtual DOM to current one, and then only then it updates DOM itself with changed elements. It doesn't, redraws the whole page every time.
Oh, I see. So there is a component, there is a concern with the performance when it comes to update the screen and avoid redraws and resizes and stuff. If I got it correctly.
There is there is no problems in Mithril performance. It's very fast, and probably because it's very lean. And it has, by the way, quite smart this diffing mechanism. But apart from that, jQuery find elements queries actually make way worse performance than all this diffing.
Yeah.
Basically, I would say you would have to try it to understand it completely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course. And
I guess
I really
that's the
guys
suggestion.
suggest this. I mean, you should try it.
Okay, okay. It seems interesting, actually, a different approach. And have you ever have tried it to develop mobile applications, for instance, with Cordova? Is it something that works well?
Is it a question to me?
So if you have tried to develop mobile applications with Mithril using Cordova,
No, I didn't.
but is it something that people do or
Well,
maybe
probably should be possible since
it's all HTML?
Yeah, sure, why not? But I think its main purpose is big one-pager applications. I mean,
single-page
dashboard,
apps.
Yeah.
the big ones where, code matters, amount of code. It really works great there.
Yeah, well, basically mobile applications done in JavaScript are always single-page apps. In general, that's an approach. Not that you could use multiple pages, but it's more efficient to remain in the same page and just update the contents. And if that is done with Mithril with the great efficiency, I think it could be probably a solution to make it faster than probably using traditional jQuery code that you find elements by name or something that is not very well indexed, and probably it is slow to perform. But okay, let's move on with another topic. This time I found an article that claims that JavaScript is the C++ of the web. Well, first, I don't know if that is a compliment or a criticism. For me, C++ is probably a painful way to write object-oriented programming code, because nowadays we are all used to scripting languages. But, well, that's my opinion. What do you guys think?
Firstly, your camera is stuck. I think you were sharing a screen or something.
Yeah, isn't it showing the screen?
No, not for me.
It shows a picture of you.
Yeah, it shows a picture. While we are trying to fix it, I can tell that, at least the way I understand it, that C++ is like a base language for everything we could write on Linux or Windows. If you want to write something that could run on multiple platforms, you would probably use C++. Of course, there are quirks for that also, but it's like the base language. And for the web, JavaScript is also this language that became basically a standard. But also, there is no alternative. So at least that's the way I would understand it. But the way article does mention that also about optimizations and the way JavaScript optimization went up to the level that now there is ideas about web assemblies, and before there were native clients that would optimize JavaScript on the C++ level or on the native level.
Yeah, well, and there are always those C++ to JavaScript compilers, right?
Yeah, there are a lot of them. Actually, mscript, and the most popular one, is actually kind of great. Recently, we tried it on our open source project Gideros, and to convert some parts of it to HTML, and till now, what it was supposed to support, what it said it supports, it actually worked quite great.
Yeah, well, anyway, I think the purpose of the article is more to make it to claim that it will be like everywhere on the web, and well, it's possible. Uh, anyway, we always know that before this wave of JavaScript becoming popular on the web with Node.js and stuff, PHP was much more popular, probably. Not so much about the language, but for instance, applications like WordPress, like it or not, it's usually popular, and it's like people using WordPress are probably not switching to anything else in the future. So maybe this article is more is thinking more about people that develop applications from scratch rather than using existing applications. And well, I don't know, but it's possible. I think JavaScript popularity will continue to grow.
I think it will.
Yeah, can you see my screen share now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I don't know why you didn't see before. Anyway, now moving on to a simple another topic about a simple library that I found interesting because sometimes simple things solve great user interface problems. This is a library called highlighter.js that you can highlight parts of the elements. You can traverse the DOM and highlight parts of the DOM. I'm clicking next just to see where it goes. Anyway, this is very simple, and, but probably not so much the focus of the library. This is probably more to programmers to help them see the elements, what is next, what is
you
previous.
mean like for debugging?
Yeah, but what I think is that sometimes the user interfaces are so cluttered that there is a need to be a way to like highlight parts of the screen that the user needs to pay attention in a specific moment, like when the users.
Yeah, you could, for example, make a tutorial for UI and highlight the parts and comment on them.
Yes, and for instance, in let me give an example of JS classes package. Any package, it doesn't matter. So, if for instance, if I click here on the ratings, it switched to another tab, scrolls the screen, and shows this border. I don't know if you paid attention to see. And these tiny little things help the user to figure where things go rather than expecting the users to guess where things are. Because users, when they come to the sites, they don't know where the sites as much as the developer that did it knows. And I was trying to find another example, like for instance this one. You click on the rankings, and it shows the highlight one, and then fades away. It's just an example. Anyway, I was talking about the highlighter JS because it reminded me this can be useful. Give ideas to make the user interfaces more user-friendly. So moving on to another topic, there is an article about writing better JavaScript using Flow. Let me share the screen here. Okay, screen share here. Okay, and the Flow is a tool that was introduced by Facebook, and it's a static type checker. And these tools are always interesting to help you to catch bugs before they hit the production. I never tried this tool, but I find it interesting because being a static type checker means it can analyze the code statically, I mean, without having to run it, and guess types that are expected and tell if they are correct. For instance, here the function foo is called, and it passes a number x, and then it calls the split method, which probably doesn't make sense on a number. So eventually this would be a bug. And well, not that I would make this type of mistake many times, but eventually anybody can make confusion of names, and eventually projects like this Flow could be used for catching these types of bugs. I don't know if you guys use any tools to analyze your code.
Yeah, like JS hint, but not a static type checker. That was actually quite interesting, especially that is provided by Facebook, as the ones who developed Hacked, which is based on PHP, which also has types now. It's more statically typed. So that just was an interesting correlation, yeah. But well, I think that the main idea could be that, well, JavaScript is weakly typed, everyone knows it, and you can redefine variable as a different type, but you will have some sort of penalty for that, some performance penalty, some memory penalty, and this kind of library could help you theoretically to analyze your code and check for such behaviors if you're changing the type of variable and prevent it. But I don't really know how much useful it would be.
Yeah, until you try it and see if it really catches any bugs.
I think it's mostly useful for big projects, you know, when you have a lot of really huge code base and you need to find some issues in it, right, to make sure that it works as expected, like in addition to testing tool. As for adding those, there was some example in this article where you apply type to elements, right, to variables. And I don't think it's really useful, because if you're really up to changing the language, you are going to use TypeScript or something like that, which has a lot of more additions than just types to the JavaScript itself, right?
Yeah. Well, both JavaScript and the PHP values have types. It's just they are not enforced like in strong type languages.
And I like it that way.
Yeah, like every time you have to try something, you have to compile it, and the compiler catches the inconsistency that you may have in the code. So, well, I guess this is probably more, as you said, for big projects that probably have a stupid mistake in the middle, and no other method is guessing where it is the mistake. So, um, for Facebook, it probably makes sense because they have probably very huge code bases. But for smaller projects, probably you will not find it so useful. I don't know. That's my perspective. Okay, moving on. Now I'm going to talk about some news or plans about Node.js. So it seems that the Node.js was going towards version 1.0, but since the fork of IOJS, they have been talking and to converge it into a single project again, and the intention is to call it 4.0. As I suppose IOJS is being called Node.js 2.0, I think. So there is a timeline here that they have been presenting here, and talks about the foundation that was created around Node.js, and supposedly the first version of the converged project would happen sometime in September.
I like the December though.
Yeah, world domination. Well, let's see what happens, because I think that Node.js, once they fully adopt ECMAScript 6, they will have things like await, and will allow you to sort of get rid of the callback hell, which
So
is,
that's what you're waiting for, right?
yeah, exactly.
That's what stops you from moving from PHP to Node.js?
No, not really, but for new projects, who knows? We are already using JavaScript a lot in new environments, not just the web, for mobile. And who knows if it makes more sense to use Node.js.
Yeah, but
If you already use npm to install certain libraries.
Yeah, like browser specific too soon. Yeah, but
Yeah.
about all these IOJS, Node.js things, then it was really interesting that yeah, there was slowdown in Node.js development, so they created their own branch and started working on it. And actually, as I know, some developers that were really switching to IOJS because of better performance of new features they added, they always remain backwards compatible. And then after Node.js announced its foundation and collaborations, they decided to move back. And I'm actually happy that this is happening, because now I would not have a headache of deciding should I move to IOJS or not.
Yeah, would not make sense, but it seems they have to divorce for a while to realize they missed each other and should converge. It should get married again.
Yeah.
Okay, and now moving on to another topic, which is basically a discussion of whether Babel JS is ready. We have talked about Babel before, and Babel is mostly, can you call it a transpiler, or what would be the accurate name to call it?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, so it converts ECMAScript 6 into ECMAScript 5, so you can run code of ECMAScript 6 on environments where ECMAScript 6 is not yet available.
Yeah, but
But
still, the question is it good enough? Is it good
yeah,
for productions? And the most popular argument I see here is that Facebook has compiled the JavaScript from the JavaScript with a Babel.js, and they are using it, so
it's a strong
probably.
argument.
Yeah, it's a strong argument. You can't really argue with that.
Well, but Facebook saying, "Ah, we did it all in ECMAScript 6 and compile with Babel." Sometimes doesn't mean that is the best solution. In the past, they also said that they had the hip hop C++ compiler that compiled PHP into C++.
Yeah, but that was understandable. They gained a performance on their server side, and every like millisecond that they save is a huge save for them in total. But in this case, I don't think that Babel.js would improve the performance. It's for now it's
Yeah,
only
it's different.
ES6 features and easier code rating, like as you're saying, no callback health and stuff like that. So was it really worth it for Facebook to move? There probably
Yeah,
should be a reason to do it.
that probably should be Facebook to answer. But what the parallel that was trying to make is that after they did a hip hop C++ compiler, they dropped it and moved on to HHVM, hip hop virtual machine, which is basically a JIT compiler because it was more realistic. I don't know, I think it was Rasmus, the creator of PHP, that tried to compile WordPress with a hip hop compiler, and it took like 19 hours. So it could be a solution for Facebook because they have thousands of machines, but for the individual developer, it was very slow. So what secrets about Babel inconveniences could be that we don't know, but probably Facebook knows? That that is the question. Well, since we don't know, there is nobody here from Facebook to answer. Let's move on to the next topic, which is about a library that seems to help solving a problem that sometimes is an headache, which is the fact that the users that access a website sometimes or most of the times are in a totally different time zone, and each user is in a different time zone, and you need to somehow get it right. And the article presents libraries, Moment.js, Moment Time Zone, which two or three, I think JSTZ.js is another, that allows you to determine the user time zone and probably do something useful with it. Um, Correct timestamps accordingly. Uh, and well, this is just more to mention it here for those that have been having those kinds of problems. I remember that in the past we recorded a hangout with Michael Kimsel, and he was telling me about this headache about dealing with time zones. And I guess this library addressed that problem.
Well, not much. If the problem I think with Kimso was that he maintained already created project which internally had dates saved in format with specific time zones. The right approach, the easiest approach, would be to when making a request or passing data to the server, always to convert your time to some specific time zone, like a UTC time zone.
Yeah.
That would be GMT plus 0, and then on the server convert to any specific time zone that you need, again for the user or for the app or something like that. So yeah, Moment.js and Moment time zones are kind of libraries that abstract what you can do on the browser side, probably also on the server side. But on the server side also you would need to have some time.h bindings, and which is used to determine your server local time zone that's set up on the server, which again had some problems. Just recently, I think this year, Moscow did not turn to the daylight saving time, and all Unix machines still thought they were turning, so there was 1 hour difference, and we had it on production server, and it was really mad thing to determine, to catch. That was really interesting. So there are lots of problems with the time zone conversions.
Right. Actually, that happens like every year in Brazil because it's not a fixed date. It's not a fixed calculation for the day they change daylight savings.
They just decided, wait, they want to do it, and they do it?
No, usually there are always the change, but it's not a rule. It's every year. It's like a new law from the government that decides it's be next week or other week. So it's and well, since I use Linux, I noticed that something went wrong with the time zones when there is an update that wants to download a new time zone file. And that's probably what should have happened with those Linux machines that you mentioned in
that's what we did basically.
Moscow. They should have updated the time zone file.
Yeah.
And that would be all right. But I know it's always a mess. And it's always a concern. It's not just the difference between the client side and the server side. So now moving on to another topic, which is yet another meta discussion, which is about, wait, where is it?
It's about jQuery.
Yeah.
Currently dying.
Is it really dying?
Of course you would say dying if you're a fan of Mithril, for example.
Yeah.
I must say I must agree with this. You know, it is dying because browsers became quite modern. You know, we still need backward support for Internet Explorer like 7. I mean, someone needs, right? Yeah. But apart from that, if you don't need that, you don't need jQuery because you have document selector, and you should be fine with that.
Yes,
about plugins.
Yes, we actually mentioned that a few podcasts ago. Yeah. That nowadays the browser APIs provide practically everything.
But jQuery now isn't just a selector or compatibility support. Look at all the plugins it supports, like UI elements you can use, like jQuery UI the same, or I don't know. There are lots of things that if
Bootstrap.
you have a jQuery, yeah, Bootstrap probably also uses it. But if you have a jQuery, you just can plug some plugins and make some stuff that you need, like fireworks on your web page if you need. Probably there's a plugin for that. So while yes, probably the main idea for jQuery was compatibility, and as I remember, since version 2, they dropped IE6 support and probably something else. It does not fulfill this function, but I think that also shows that they strongly believe they are not compatibility library anymore, and they are something more, including all the functionality in browsers that are around it. So,
Yeah,
in my opinion, it's not dying; it's evolving, changing.
it's an ecosystem, not just a library. Now everything tends to be a jQuery plugin just because people don't know anything else. There are jQuery programmers and JavaScript programmers.
True. Artem, what did you want to say?
I mean, yes, you do know alternative. Actually, I think the biggest problem of jQuery is that it is jQuery. I mean, it just has too low on functional side um, needed in modern world. I mean, there is a lot of frameworks which do MVC, which do MMVC or whatever. Virtual DOM is there, but jQuery is pretty much nothing from those parts, right? Am I right? I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't used it since like jQuery 1.8 or so. I didn't see it 2.0. I've seen some projects on jQuery mobile, and this is a good example of where you can, pivot for jQuery. But jQuery itself is pretty much just not functional enough, I think, for modern apps.
Yeah, but it's just that so many plugins were developed around it that, well, if
So they
you find a plugin that relies on jQuery, how are we going to get rid of jQuery?
yeah, well, the main problem that jQuery was a leader for a long time, and now there are many different approaches and packages, as Artem mentioned, but problem is there is no specific leader. So while there is no one to inherit leadership like jQuery did, then till then jQuery won't die.
Yeah, and as I comment before we are recording, this is when I read like things like a negative sentiment, it seems more like a competition between jQuery and something else than a um, real a real argument uh, that can prove that jQuery is dying. Everything that is popular has haters, and the haters gonna hate, and
I,
uh,
I thought
I don't know. I don't know if it is even worth discussing the existence of haters.
Yeah, probably, but I think you almost went a little further and said like jQuery has a bad like name to it. So I started comparing jQuery to Internet Explorer in my mind. So even if Internet Explorer would be fixed and work normal and it's even rebranded, I think there still would be negative like uh, negative look on it, and probably everyone would still trash it. So I don't think
Yeah.
jQuery has fallen so low yet. Yeah, it's a huge for functionality it provides, but it's all due to backward compatibility stuff and stuff like that. But it's not that bad.
Yeah. Well, I think everything changes, and for people to switch from jQuery to something else, it must be much better in many aspects. Things that jQuery provides and people depend on. Okay, so now let's move on to one final topic, which is something relatively new, or at least I was not aware, which is precisely about something that Chrome is introducing called the request idle callback. Basically, this is a callback that you can assign to a function to do something when the user is idle or the browser is idle. I'm not sure if what is the case, but it is interesting because you could probably do things on the background while the user is not doing anything that demands any resources from the browser. Like, for instance, when the user is reading an article, using this callback, you could do some non-essential work, like they give an example here. So it's not to do something fundamental or necessary, but could be useful to, I don't know. I keep remembering those programs that you could install in your machine, and they would search for life in other planets or something like that.
Also use the resources, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, I think the great idea came before podcast when we were talking that Artem said for analytics. So probably, yeah, most will use analytics, like most websites use it, and they are reporting to the server, and it probably consumes something from user experience too. But in this case, if such request idle callback is available, then it would be great to send information to the server when the user is idle and do not interfere with its experience.
Yeah, could be one good use. Actually, they have here an example process pending analytic events.
Yeah.
So that could be one of the purposes. Anyway, this
really old TageCrunch website, I mean old version of it, it has really like the worst performance from that point in time. It was loading huge set of images, scripts, ads, and so on, so it was really slow. Do you remember that?
No.
No? I don't know, it was like 5 years ago probably. Anyway, I think it might be useful when you have a lot of content on your site. Like, you downloaded first part of the page, right? Users started looking into it, and you're silently downloading in the background and rendering images, ads, or whatever is, requires a lot of CPU time. So user won't be disturbed by lagging.
So it's like you display one page to the user, and when he's idle, you download other pages he might want to look at.
A lot of websites don't really load images until you scroll to them.
Yeah.
Right. You could just preload them in those background callbacks, idle callbacks.
Yeah, that would make sense also. Right.
Yeah, that could be interesting, and I think if browsers start adopting it this widely, this is supposed to be introduced in Chrome 46, but if browsers start using this widely, sooner or later people will come with interesting ways to take advantage of this possibility. Okay, basically we reached the end of this podcast. I'd like to thank you, Artem, for coming, and also Arthurs for taking your time where you're supposed to be in bed, in a warm bed, to deal with the cold, and with this, on my behalf, that is all for now. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.